Every person in this room is distinct from another. We are all different and special in our own way, but how and why? Why are we different and how does that happen? The ongoing debate of nature versus nurture is asking whether our nature, our genetics, is what makes us who we are, or is it our nurture, our experiences and environmental impacts that make us who we are? So, before I begin, I would like to ask what you all think. Raise your hand if you think it's nurture. Raise your hand if you think it's nature. And raise your hand if you think it's both or you don't know. Well, to make this a little more interesting, let's have a small competition, shall we? So, right down the middle, we'll split it, and everyone on this side of the room, including the grade 6 and 7s watching from home, is Team Nurture. And then everyone on this half of the room, including the grade 8s and anyone else tuning in, is Team Nurture. So let's hear it from Team Nature. And from side Nurture over here. Okay, so throughout my presentation, I will be giving points to each side to ultimately see who wins the battle of nature versus nurture. Hi, my name is Danae Jan, and welcome to my Masterworks presentation titled Born This Way or Made This Way, an investigation of the environmental and genetic influences on personality, which, trust me, not as complicated as it seems. So, to start off, let's take a look at my family. I tend to be very extroverted, while my brother tends to be more introverted. Even though we have many similarities, we have very different personalities. As you can see, I did not enjoy the golf game as much as my brother. My brother and I share the same parents, which means our genetic makeup is similar but not the same. We are also raised in similar conditions. For example, we did the same after-school activities, such as baseball, biking, and soccer. So, was it our genetics or our experiences that shaped us into the people we are today? I never really thought much about people's differences until I got older and more curious, and that's when I started noticing it more. The person in class who would always be glued to a book, or the person always cracking jokes. And it made me wonder why we are all so different. And this curiosity led me to my Masterworks topic. In this presentation, I will talk about genetics, epigenetics, personality, structure and function of the brain, twins, and my own case study. Now I just listed off a whole bunch of things, and you might be wondering, how do they all connect? Well, each of these things individually make up who you are as a whole. So by looking at them, we will be able to get a better understanding of why we are the way we are. The basis of life is DNA, which in turn results in your makeup of your genes. It is the foundation of who you are. DNA is located in the nucleus and a small part located in the mitochondria. It is the carrier of genetic information. Sections of DNA come together to form genes, and many genes together form chromosomes. People inherit 2 sets of chromosomes, one from each parent, which is why every person has 2 copies of each gene. Most genes have 2 alleles, a dominant and a recessive. An allele is just a form of a specific gene. For example, the eye color allele. There can be many different alleles, blue, green, brown, etc. So let's say you get a blue eye allele from your mom and a brown from your dad. Your eye color will be brown because the brown allele is the dominant while the blue is the recessive. Genes act as instructions to make molecules called proteins. To function properly, each cell relies on thousands of proteins to do their job in the right place at the right time. Sometimes changes in the gene called mutations prevent one or more of these proteins from doing their job. I would say right off the bat, that's 1 point for Team Nature. Meiosis is the basic of genetic inheritance. It is used for just one purpose of your body, the making of gametes, which are sex cells, commonly known as sperm and egg cells. When the sperm and egg cells meet, they fuse together in a process called fertilization. Each cell, the sperm and the egg, contribute half the genetic makeup of the offspring. There are 2 phases of meiosis, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2, which I will briefly discuss now. Before going through meiosis, the cell makes a copy of all its DNA. Prophase 1, all the chromosomes line up in their homologous pairs. Homologous pairs contain the same gene in the same part of the chromosome. When they pair up, they go through a process called crossing over, where the pairs swap parts of their DNA. This creates diversity within the traits that an offspring inherits from the parents. It is also common for there to be more than one crossover. There can be up to 25. The next phase is metaphase 1, when the chromosomes randomly line up in the middle, also known as the equator, and get ready to be pulled apart into 2 different sides or poles. After metaphase 1 comes anaphase 1. This is where the homologous pairs get pulled apart into their 2 different poles. Finally, in telophase, where the cell divides into 2 haploid cells, cytokinesis occurs. Haploid cells meaning it only has half the chromosomes. In meiosis 2, it is a much shorter process. It is just like meiosis 1, but with the haploid cells made from meiosis 1. The result is 4 new haploid cells. In humans, the product of meiosis is sperm and egg cells. The haploid cells are not identical. There can be many different variations because of crossing over and how they line up with the equator. Now you can understand why children tend to look a bit like both parents, and even their grandparents, and can even have some of the same talents. Dang, that's 2 points for Team Nature! Now we're going to look at epigenetics, or more like epic genetics, am I right? Epigenetics is one of the main factors of why we change. Epigenetics takes the influence from our life and impacts it at the genetic level. It is the combination of nature and nurture. Epigenetics is the study of changes in the gene expression that does not change the underlying DNA sequence. It changes how the cell reads the gene. On a genetic level, what's happening is a chemical compound is added to a single gene that can control the gene's activity. It's like if you're on a boat and you were to add a captain to the boat that can control where and what the boat does. The captain of the boat are like the epigenomes. They are the chemical compound that can be attached to a gene. Epigenetic changes can turn a cell's activity on or off, or stop certain cells from producing proteins. So it's like your captain stopping the ship from moving or becoming a trade ship. It has control. The impacts of epigenetics can vary between different people, which is why we can be so different, because of the experiences we have that not every person has. Epigenetic changes, or the lack of them, can lead to genetic disorders such as cancer, metabolic disorders, and degenerative disorders. However, epigenetics are also positive as they differentiate our liver cells from brain cells by activating or deactivating proteins. So, then do you get your parents' epigenetic tags? Well, not exactly. Inside the sperm and egg cell, almost all the tags are reset to allow the child to make their own. However, usually around 1% do not get reset. Therefore, you may have some of your parents' epigenetic tags. Epigenetics is important because it is one of the contributing factors to individuality and diversity between people. 1 point Team Nurture! Our personality is how we present ourselves, how we interact, how we behave, and so much more. Personality is interesting to me because no one has the same personality as anyone else. And before this project, I didn't even know how to classify personality. Now I know that there are 4 different perspectives on how to view personality. Psychoanalytic perspective, humanistic perspective, trait perspective, social cognitive perspective. All of these different perspectives help us understand and explain why we behave the way we do. Psychoanalytic perspective on personality was developed by the psychiatrist Sigmund Freud, who believes that things in the unconscious mind could be revealed in a number of different ways, such as dream analysis, free association, and ink blots. The humanistic perspective focuses on psychological growth, free will, and personal awareness. It takes a positive outlook on human life and how everyone can reach their own potential. The trait perspective, also known as the Big Five, is centered on identifying, describing, and measuring specific traits that make up human personality. The social cognitive perspective emphasizes the importance of observing others, self-efficiency, situational influences, and self-regulation of behaviors. I chose to focus on the Big Five trait theory because it is the most popular and very easy to understand. It is also very easy to see the differences in personality when comparing 2 people. The Big Five trait theory aligns you among 5 traits that describe out the difference between people. These traits spell out ocean: O for openness, C for conscientiousness, E for extroversion, A for agreeableness, and N for neuroticism. For each of the traits, there is a scale or range of 2 extremes. It is important to note that one extreme is not better than the other. The first trait is openness, which features insight and imagination. People who are high in this trait have more hobbies and are more willing and eager to learn and try new things. People who are lower in this trait are often more traditional and may struggle when thinking about abstract ideas and may resist new ideas. Conscientiousness. This features good impulse control, thoughtfulness, and goal-directed behaviors. People who are high in this trait tend to be more organized and mindful of details. They think about how their actions affect others and are mindful of deadlines. People who are lower in this trait are more likely to procrastinate, make a mess, and dislike a schedule and structure. Next is extroversion. This is easily one of the most well-known traits, which is characterized by excitability, sociability, talkativeness, assertiveness, and high amounts of emotional expression. Someone who's high in this trait enjoys being the center of attention, likes meeting new people, and they often gain energy by being with others. They have a wide circle of friends and don't think before speaking. Someone who's low in this trait feels uncomfortable in social situations, and often needs time to recharge after. They dislike making small talk, starting conversations, and they carefully think before speaking. Next is agreeableness. This includes attributes such as trust, kindness, affection, and other pro-social behaviors. People who are high in this trait care about other people's feelings, help people in need, and enjoy being a part of someone else's happiness. People who are low in this trait are less aware of others' feelings and how their behaviors affect others. They are also more competitive. And finally, we have neuroticism, which is characterized by sadness, moodiness, and emotional instability. People who are high in this trait experience a lot of stress and worry about many different things. They get upset easily and struggle to rebound from stressful situations and feel anxious. People who are low in this trait are more emotionally stable, are very relaxed, and don't worry much. They deal with stress well and rarely feel sad or depressed. Personalities don't stay the same throughout your whole life. Just like everything else, they are changing and developing. There are a few environmental impacts that have been proven to help develop a child's personality, such as attachment from child to primary caregiver, friendship, and self-concept, as well as many more. There was a study done over the span of 5 decades. They had people fill out a survey in 1960 and fill out another one almost 60 years later, with the hopes of determining how personalities change over time and how big or small that change can be. Over the 5 decades, not all the participants kept the same personality traits. Some participants had dramatic changes while others didn't. A professor at the University of Illinois, where the study took place, had said that this doesn't necessarily mean that all of our personalities change. For example, as an extroverted teenager, there's a 63% chance that I will identify as an extrovert in my 60s. However, what seems to be very consistent is the relationship between traits. For example, someone who's very extroverted and slightly neurotic will maintain that relationship throughout their whole life, while other traits may shift. Most importantly, this study showed that over a long period of time, our personalities can change slightly or dramatically, most likely due to our life experiences. Another point for Team Nurture, and we have a tie game. Now we'll look at where your personality is controlled, your brain, which is arguably one of the most important parts of your body. The frontal lobe is the front part of your brain, also the biggest section of your brain. It deals with many things such as speech and language, motor skills, forming memories, empathy, reward-seeking behavior, and personality development, which means damage to the frontal lobe can alter a person's personality. There was a study done at the University of Minnesota that used 116 volunteers who did a personality test and then a brain scan. The results found that there are many links between size and parts of the brain and personality. For example, everyone knows that extroverted people like to be in social situations and gain energy off each other. This is because they are more motivated to seek reward. The part of the brain that considers reward is called the orbital frontal cortex, which is above and behind your eyes. This tends to be bigger in more extroverted people. All of the big 5 traits, except for openness, are found to be related to the structure of your brain. This doesn't mean that your personality is fixed at birth. Experiences change the development of your brain, which can in turn impact your personality. This is just another example of the combination of genetics and experiences that can influence your personality. 1 point for each side. Identical twins are a perfect target for research studies on nature and nurture because they are genetically the same, so all their differences can be attributed to the environment. So we'll start off by looking at the different types of twins. There are 3 different types of twins: identical, fraternal, and semi-identical. Fraternal twins are basically just siblings that share the womb. They start out as separate eggs fertilized by separate sperm. They share the same amount of DNA as any siblings would. Identical twins start out as one fertilized egg, and very early in the development, the egg splits into 2, which means they have the exact same DNA from their mom and the exact same from their dad. There can be a small genetic difference in identical twins when the egg divides. There can be changes in the genome that can lead to this difference. So, based on what I said, can anyone make any guesses on what semi-identical twins would start out as, knowing as fraternal twins start out as 2 eggs and 2 sperm, and identical twins start out as 1 egg and 1 sperm? Okay, well, semi-identical twins are very rare, and they start out as the same egg, but it gets fertilized by 2 different sperm. Usually it doesn't survive. However, sometimes the egg can divide into 2, creating 1 egg fertilized by 2 different sperm. These twins share the same copy of DNA from their mother and a different copy from their father. As a part of my Masterworks, I did a study on identical twins. My goal was to find out if it is possible to identify personality differences that are due to the environment in identical twins. In other words, I'm looking at how the environment impacts their personalities. After researching other studies that have been done, it was time for me to construct my survey. I divided my survey into 5 sections: personality, likes and dislikes, hobbies and interests, environment growing up, and questions about your twin. My goal was to have a survey that could be done in 15 minutes or less and still give me all the information I wanted. After I wrote all the questions for my survey, I got a pair of twins to look over it and make suggestions. Then it was time for me to send out my survey. I sent out my survey to around 12 sets of twins and received 7 pair of twin responses back. Once the results started rolling in, I had to analyze the survey. At first, I would compare twins in a personality level in a chart and then again in other categories, as you can see on the board. This, however, was not the most effective way. Luckily, my advisor, Karen, was able to step in and help me organize it better. She helped me organize my survey responses into a Google Sheet and start organizing in a more efficient and clear way. The graph you see now shows the amount out of 15 questions that the twins answered the same. The majority of the twins got more than 7 questions the same, and the highest any set of twins got the same was 12. The twins are all labeled by letters along the x-axis, and the amount of questions they got the same is on the y. For the graphs you're about to see, I divided the personality section into each of the big 5 traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. In the survey, there were 3 questions for each of the traits. So from the 3 answers, I averaged them and made the graphs comparing the twins side by side. For example, one question asked, do you like to spend time with others? The possible answers could be 1, no, not at all, 2, rarely, 3, sometimes, 4, most of the time, and 5, all the time. The graph we're looking at now shows twin set A. You can see that for each of the personality sections, they got within a 1-point difference, which shows you that they are very similar. You can also see that they're the most similar in agreeableness, and they're the most different in all the other ones. This graph is looking at twin set B. You can see that they are very similar as well. They're the most different in the trait neuroticism. Twin set C were just off by 1-point differential for all the categories. They're very similar in conscientiousness, extroversion, and neuroticism. Twin set D were the most different in their personalities. Their openness and agreeableness were the same, but they differed in extroversion and neuroticism. And in the survey, they answered that one was more extroverted than the other, and you can see that in the results here. Twins E were tied for the most similar. They got almost every question the same. This shows how similar their personalities are. They scored in the same range for each question, which means that they are high or low in the same traits. On the graph looking at twin set F, you can see that they're very similar and only had differences in extroversion and agreeableness, although their differences are very small. Lastly, twin set G were tied for most similar. They had the same answers for almost every category in the survey. They mentioned that one was more outgoing, which you can see in the results here. On the graph that you see now, it shows how many of the twins were in the same class, had the same friends, and did the same after-school activities while they were growing up. 3 is a yes, 2 is a sometimes, and 1 is a no. You can see that all the twins had the same friends as kids, and most twins did the same after-school activities. However, most twins were not put in the same classes as kids. There are more graphs and charts, but from all the answers from the survey, is it possible to identify personality differences that are due to the environment and identical twins? Yes and no. Yes, because looking at the results, I was able to see a difference in each pair of twins. Although there were not many, but also no, because I don't think that I really found out why. I think that for most twins, there was a major event that happened to one twin and not the other. For example, one of the twins in my survey moved to Berlin while the other stayed at home, or one went through a hearing loss which the other didn't. These major events could be the reason that they are all different. In some twins, there wasn't a major event that happened and impacted them and made them different, and yet they are. So for some twins, I was able to identify personality differences and the cause of them, but for others, I was not. So, is it nature or nurture? Who won the big game? Well, I hate to be the one to say it, but the final score is 3-3, which means it's a tie game. Nature and nurture work in a way where everything is intertwined. It is the balance between your genetics and your experiences that impacts you and shapes you as you grow up. Think about it as if people were Play-Doh. They come in a bottle with a predetermined color and texture, your genetic makeup, but the person playing with you, the environment, can shape you however they want. It can mix you with another color, it can only use half of you, or it can just let you sit there. That's what it's like. Although sometimes prediction is possible, you'll never know what the environment will do to you. There's no way to predict how you'll turn out, but we know that the experiences you have will help shape who you become. Looking back again at my brother Eric and I, we have many differences, but why is he more introverted? Well, one of my guesses is because I was the second born. I thought I had to be heard so I wasn't forgotten. This meant that I would put myself out there more to let everyone know I was there. Eric has always been slightly more like my mom, whereas I've always been slightly more like my dad, and that's where the genetics comes to play. We are the people we are today because of both our genetics and our experiences. Throughout this project, I thought a lot about who I'm similar to: my mom, my dad, my brother, and even my grandparents. So I would encourage all of you to take some time and think about that too. It is interesting what you find out and how you can be so similar and so different at the same time. So, to conclude, I think we are a product of both nature and nurture. Why we are the way we are is a combination of so many things in life. Our genetics and experiences all come together and intertwine, and the result, well, that's you. In a world where there are so many questions left unanswered, I tried to answer the age-old question of nature versus nurture. And I think in some ways there are answers, but overall, it's still one of life's greatest mysteries. And even though it was a tie game, I think everyone here is a winner. There are many people that helped me throughout this process, and for that I would like to thank them. First off, I would like to thank my parents for the gift of life and the gift of food and always supporting me. I would also like to thank all of the twins who filled out my survey as well, and a huge shout out to Kaylee and Sam Spear for helping me write the survey. I would also like to thank the one and only Jennifer Henriksen, because she was always there for us. She read over everyone's paper and always made sure we were on track. A huge thank you to my external advisor, Karen Snyder, for all the time she put into helping me. She was a huge help in organizing my data and making my essay better, so thank you. I would also like to thank Pam Matthews, my internal advisor, for everything she's done for me throughout this project. She always supported me, whether it was helping me understand concepts, reading through my paper, or reaching out to twins. She has a crazy busy life, and I'm thankful that I got to be a part of it. Lastly, I would like to thank all of you for coming or tuning in to my Masterworks presentation.
And thank you so much. It's been such a delight working with you. We've had so much fun, and I love all the science that you taught us today. A lot of genetics there. This is a bit of a heavy question. You and I talked about this one. But with all of the racial tension that's happening around the world these days, I've been wondering about how it is that people develop so much hate towards people who are different. Where does this come from? Why does it happen? So what do you think? Is it nature? Are they born that way? Or do you think it's nurture? Somehow people are taught?
Well, I would say it's both, because I think nature, it's like we're born this way, ingrained in us, kind of like an us-them mentality, and we kind of are programmed like towards people who are in our like so-called group, and we kind of judge people and we see their differences right away. But I think it's also nurture, because how we're raised in society and all the impacts and just the way the system is right now, that I think kids need to be taught about judging people and differences. So I would say overall that I think it is both, because it is nature and nurture combined that make us who we are.
Sure. Ms. Jan, that was really fun to watch how you put all of that together. I particularly loved watching your slides and seeing how you organized it all. And that really is what my question is about, because you covered a lot of territory, from the inner workings of DNA to the brain to reproduction to personalities in the 5 different ways, and then you went and did your study with twins. And I just wanted, I don't know that you thought you were going to be doing Google surveys when you started out thinking about your Masterworks or data visualization and such. And I was just wondering if you could describe what pieces of the learning process or things that you were doing, as well as the content, really struck out at you as being not what you expected or something new, and which ones you might think you might end up using again.
Well, a lot of the things that like struck out to me was a lot of the personality and the twin section, because the personality, it was really surprising how they were 4 different perspectives, and I only briefly covered 3 of them. And so you can go into a lot of deeper research about that, and I think that was super surprising, because I always thought like, oh, personalities like introvert and extrovert. And I think there were a lot of things that I learned throughout this process that I will definitely keep with me, like just the researching and trying to understand like all the genetics and everything. You have to like continue to be like reading it over and trying to say like, oh, what do you think this means? And I think also putting together the survey was a really useful skill that I learned, and like analyzing the data and formulating questions, and I think all that I will carry with me.
Great job, Ms. Jan. Thank you so much. My question for you is, you didn't talk about gender. And I'm wondering, when we think about nature versus nurture, especially with twins, if gender plays a role at all, or if you feel that gender would play a role at all.
I think that in some ways gender does play a role. One of the things that I didn't talk about is like epigenetic changes. There was this study on PTSD from prisoners of the war, and down in the male line only, you could see results of being a prisoner in the war. So they kind of went through the same kind of PTSD, even in like great-grandchildren, but that was only on the male side of the family, and it did not impact the female side at all. So I think that in some ways there is like the sex component, whether it's like male or female, it does impact it a little bit, but I'd say overall it's not a major.